try to be as brief as possible, especially that we've got a very, very official opening within right about 11. So I'm supposed to have until this time. As I'm a historian for my first training, and as you are, if you are ready to understand why Polish book market develops right now up to this level, not quite higher one, let's put it this way. I would say you need a really, really short, and trust me, it won't be short, historical background from last years. So that's how Poland looked like in September the 1st, 1939. So in the very moment of the war, World War II outbreak, okay? Then we were attacked by Germans, then we were 70 days later attacked by Russians, and how Poland was conquered and divided between the two occupations, okay? Later on, as you probably know, Germans attacked Russians, or the USSR, and the whole Poland went under the German occupation. More or less like this, and within the front change and the USSR going to the west, the whole former lands of Poland were once again taken by the USSR and fell under the short occupation, and then it transferred into the so-called Polish communism, so the Polish People Republic, or People Republic of Poland. As I understand, we do have a Romanian here who probably understand very well what I'm talking about right now. What you should know first is that Poland's lands changed. Intellectual centers of Poland, more or less. Well, of course, you can argue this or that, but in general, that would be the main. So Warsaw, Krakow, Lviv, Vilno, Poznań. After the war, the map changed rapidly up to this. So Lviv and Vilno went to the USSR. Right now, they're Lithuanian and Ukrainian cities. And we gain Wrocław as also a very important intellectual center later on. And from 1944-45 up to 1990, we got something which might be called a communism in Poland. Okay, so we transferred. There are some things you should know if we are talking book market in general. In communism, it might help. Yes? Okay. So it might help you not just in the case of Poland, but in general any communist country. So in that period, as you can see, there are some very important factors. As you can see, first of all, in general, everything was state-owned. This includes all parts of booking industry, let me put it this way. What's very important here is that during the time what we had was the total destruction of nearly all private enterprises in the field. So what used to be private started to be state-owned in many different ways. The whole book market, as you can see, became fully controlled by the state. And this control includes
nearly all important spheres, so not just the question of owning the manufacturing of book or the publishing houses, but also limitation of paper, also the decision which author is supposed to be printed or not, and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. This is how the situation looked more or less in numbers. So we had about, during the communism, we had about 200 publishing houses in Poland, more or less, as I said. Most of this data I'm giving you here are done for the end, for the finishing period of communism, because that's where we do have the best research done, which is obvious. So, as you can see, nonetheless, that we used to have 200 publishing houses, over 90% of books published in Poland were done by 10 main publishing institutions. The average standard of publishing was not very low as for a communist country. So 10,000 titles a year, it's not a bad level, as I said, if we consider this the reality. That's probably why Poland in this time was, by many, considered the very country from the bloc, from the Eastern Bloc, very interesting from intellectual point of view. What I would like to stress is the average edition level, especially if we are talking important books. In this time, it was very high, because nobody really cared for any economic relations. So nobody really cared whether the book is going to work on itself, I mean sell itself well. So the average edition level was really high. 18,000 as an average is huge. That gave us the number of 175 million books printed a year. It's much higher than right now. But this is not because of number of titles, but the average edition, okay? It changed, of course. It's changed in 1990. The thing is that first what you need to know and what you need to remember, that the true, really something which might be called a book market right now is not more than 30 years old in Poland. That's an important factor. The other part is that, as you can see, we went up. I mean, market is market, and right now we do have more or less 2,500 publishing houses in Poland. Well, actually, it's not official, but the truth is that we do have over 4,000 publishing houses in Poland. Yeah, but the thing is that about 1,500 of them is not working. I mean, they're publishing like book a year or book every 3 years or something like this, okay? So what we are saying, something we might really call a publishing house, we do have 2,500 right now. The truth is that if we are talking concentration of the market, we are still on a quite high level. I mean, over three-fourths of the market is controlled by 35 publishing houses. So, as I said, concentration is really high. Maybe it's because the market, actually, it's still relatively new. As you can see, the number of titles published a year went up, and went up significantly, few times up. But the book average edition level is less than 3,500, which is not very high indeed. Which gives us less than we had in 1990, so which gives us about 100 million books printed a year. Okay. Let me show it in change, because this is what gives you the very idea of how it really worked like. This is the perspective, as you see, from the 1990 till 1914. And, well, I think this chart is pretty clear. That's how it changed. What's really important here, you can see that the market is developing in the sense that we are more and more looking for new titles. There is nearly constant raise of number of titles published yearly. But, on the other hand, people are reading less and less. It's still more and more, or less and less effective to print a book and earn on it. So, the average edition level as well is dropping. It, about 2005-10, dropped to the level that it's not dropping anymore really high, because it simply can't. It's really low. Okay. So, what do we print? Okay. This is what do we print. If you can see here, if you walk, for example, on a typical book fair, you'll find out that most publishing houses who are exhibiting themselves very strongly, and they're very effective, also visually effective, are usually this 13%, so this percent the literature. But the truth is that book market in Poland, at least, but it's not just the Polish case, it's mainly made by professional stuff, school, and handbooks and so on. So that's how it looked like. Books for children, quite important factor in the book market. I would say that this is very high, those others. Why? Because, for example, in Poland, which I would say a few words later on, there are some specifics. And among the specifics, you do have, for example, a huge number of Catholic books, religious books, religious-related books. It's quite a bit of market. Okay. Now, the revenue and what does it really mean, and what kind of firms you do have in here. As you can see, those are the biggest in financial sense, in revenue sense, publishing houses in Poland. The data are, as you can see, for 2014, because that's when we do have a research. I mean, really worth analyzing research. The thing is that from those books, in the first five, there is no other structure than dealing with educational or professional books. First five are just educational, professional. In the other five, you got just two, which are also dealing with literature. So the most important would be the Znak publishing house. But also Wydawnictwo Olesiejuk, they are also dealing with literature, fine. They are dealing actually with everything. I mean, so whatever they will get, they will print. Even the Publicat, it's also educational. Macmillan is educational. Well, educational group is of course educational, and so on. This how it's looked like when you look at the concentration. This schema shows you the level of concentration. It's really high, as you can see. 35 big publishing houses in Poland controls nearly 80% of the market. The market itself oscillates around 2 billion zlotys, which would be like €500 million or $700 million. So it's not outstanding, but it's significant. This is, maybe it would be better seen not this way, but not vertically, not horizontally, but vertically. Okay. How does it look from where Poles get their books from? Those are main areas from where we get our books. And what's interesting here, that still individual bookstores are the most important factor here. And that's quite interesting. Those are not the huge, big mega stores, multimedia mega stores. Although they are second important. And if you consider that in Poland, actually, if we are talking huge multimedia mega stores concentrating on book market, then we are talking Empik, a particular firm, particular company. Then their importance is unbelievable. Used books are not that popular as they used to be, especially during the communist times. As you can see, it's decreasing. Reading clubs, unfortunately, are dying, simply. I don't know how it works anywhere else, but I think, yeah, it's similar. But what you can see that internet bookstores are going up. So the very traditional ways of acquiring book are decreasing. The very modern ones are developing slowly, but they are. Press clubs and kiosks. People has less and less times. This is interesting. They are not going to reading clubs anymore, but they are sometimes going to press clubs. They are not going to professional bookstores, but they are going to kiosks and buying books there. Discounts. Well, we're not earning more money anymore. We're earning less, and we're trying to be really careful what we're spending on. So when we can get a book cheaper, we do. This is very interesting. Book became just an element of a free market economy, nothing more, in some sense, of course. What is the consequence? The consequence is that we are selling more and more books in just general all-purpose mega stores where you can buy everything, like from groceries to home supplies and books. Others, of course. Okay, now the problem which we do have actually is the wholesale distribution service. Because if we are talking formally, we do have nearly 200 wholesale distributors. But the truth is that we do have 4. And they are Azymut, Olejsiuk, Platon, Wikr. Because what they do is they do over 90% of our wholesale in the book market. So in general, they are monopolists. I mean, it's a little bit crazy to say there are 4 monopolists, but in some sense, it's not that crazy as it sounds. Okay. Now, those are, maybe someone might be interested in it. I'm very sorry to say that because I'm not listing my own publishing house here, but I'm trying to be honest. I'm not the biggest one, definitely. So those are the most important Polish belle-lettres, as you can see, publishing houses. And I gave you here the number of titles, so you can know how many titles they're in general publishing. They're put in alphabetical order Of course, I think that if you will get to some of Director Jaworski employees, so the Polish Institute of Book, our National Institute of Book, they will give you the data from my presentation without any problem. But that's more or less how it looks like. This is the 10 most important publishers in belles lettres in Poland. The thing which might be really interesting, Jesus Christ, here is translations. How does it look like? It's quite interesting. As you can see, definitely and still the two most important Polish writers who are translated to any language in general are Stanisław Lem and Henryk Sienkiewicz. But there are still, the number is growing and it starts to include more and more current writers, contemporary ones. I tried to also add you the number of languages where we do. For example, Joanna Chmielewska is a funny story because she's writing let's say, funny crime stories. And she's unbelievably popular in Russia. So they're printing her like crazy. So that's why she's got so huge or so high level in the structure. But if we're talking people translated to many languages, they're usually very, very serious Polish literature classics, let's say. Okay. In some cases, as you can see, as Adam Mickiewicz, I think our most famous poet and dramaturgist and intellectual, one might say, we simply do not have the data. So I'm not giving you the data because I would be falsing you to some extent. Okay. Now, as you can see, we can find many of 20th century writers, dead and alive even still, who are also quite popular and quite well translated. Okay? We have also very interesting situations, completely different than Chmielewska, like, for example, Antoni Libera, who is one of the greatest Polish translators, especially did the marvelous translations of Beckett, of Sophocles, and many other stuff, but he's an intellectual and a writer and wrote a marvelous novel. His debut was when he was 50 or something, 50-something even. And he wrote a book called Madame. It's a novel, and it became unbelievably popular and being translated into so many languages. So, you need to know to what language we are usually translated to. As you can imagine, of course, we are translating mostly from English, as everyone does. But what is interesting, take a look at this, that if we are talking English or German or even French, the number of belles lettres, so literature translations, is not that high, so which means we are translating a lot of professional books from those languages. If we are talking languages which are a little bit more exotic to Poles, like Norwegian, let's say, or Japanese, we're just translating the literature, period. As you can see, the differences here are none, actually. What's interesting, Russian is not very high, as you can imagine. That's how it looked with Polish books translated to other languages. As you can see, still we are the most interesting for the Russians. Then, well, English means As you know, English right now is a lingua franca. I'm speaking to you in English. So the thing is that when you are talking that we are translated to English, it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't mean that we are going to be published in United Kingdom. It might mean United States, Australia, and tons of other places. Germany. Germany is our great economic partner, but also our intellectual and cultural partner. It's not, there's nothing strange in it that we are translated to German, also quite popular. But interesting is, for example, the level for Italian and Spanish. I think not many people in Poland realizes how popular we are in those two countries. For example, much more than in France or in Czech. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. Now, the biggest problem which everybody has everywhere, and we do have it in Poland, is of course the readership level. Okay, we are saying in general people are not reading anymore. They quit reading, and yeah, that's up to some extent is true. The reader level. What does it mean, a reader level? So it means someone who says that he has read at least one book a year. So it's a really low level, okay? And as you can see, it's below 50%. Of course, even lower is the level of the book buyers. It's looking a little bit devastating. Those are the qualities which are used mostly by the European Union to judge the readership level. You can take a look at that within years. How does it change? Not much. It's still really, really low. And the people who are, let's say, befriended with the books, so who read more than 7 books a year, it's not really a very high level. It's dramatically low, one might say. As you can see, our average is in general, we're generally in low end of European Union in this category. But if we will go and see or look at it from a different perspective, so for example, if we will measure it the way it's measured around the world, so within a weekly reading time in hours, which is more, I mean, because it also includes internet, it also includes press, it's not just concerned in books. Then the Poland is on the 13th place around the world, which I would say it's not that devastating anymore. And for example, we are before many countries like Germany is 22, UK is 26. Okay, so you must understand that if we are talking readership, it really is important what kind of survey you're actually doing. What are your tools? Because depending on the tools, you'll get the effect. Okay? All right. Now, I'm bringing it to an end. So maybe this one might be a little bit interesting. It's how people are getting actually books, not buying, but getting their books. As you can see, most of the people are either buying books, but by most it means 30% among those who already answered positively. They are reading, they are getting books. But most of the people just take whatever is at home. So, folks, let's buy books and let's have it for our children, because the first thing which they will read is what they will get from their shelf. and that's research, it's not me. Borrowed. We're social animals. We're exchanging information. We're exchanging information about books we like, and we're borrowing books. It's really important. School libraries, as you can see, is very small. But if you combine all the libraries together, it shows that library is a really important source of getting the books. Let's not kill libraries. I mean, it's really important to have them. And this is the funny part for the last: download from internet legally and illegally. Of course, those are the people, they were very brave because they declared, yes, I do get books from internet illegally. We do have some local specifics. First, what I've told you, Poland is quite a religious country, and we do have over 5% of our book market is connected with Catholicism. I think here in Arabic countries, it might be quite similar, only the religion is different. But the very situation might be quite similar. History. Well, we all in Central Eastern Europe are a little bit crazy about history. We in Poland are completely mad. I mean, like in Israel, guys are completely mad on archaeology. I can tell you an anecdote. I used to have a friend who said that Israel is the one and only country when you can have a seminar in ancient archaeology of Palestinian, and you got 2,000 people getting in, and it all ends in a huge fight. But I mean fist fight, not just... so the same thing is with history in Poland. History is unbelievably popular in Poland. So this is something incredible. I mean, there's no other country in Europe where during 25 years, among 20 bestsellers, there's always a history book. And I mean bestsellers like crime stories, everything. I mean, whole bestseller list. This is a very interesting example of how we do welcome. This is Norman Davies, British historian, who appears to write on Poland. His books are selling like crazy. They're selling like crime stories. So what's the funny part of it? It is that because of this, how his books are selling, usually what he does, even he's writing his books in English, he usually first published them in Polish translation and in Poland, because it's the place where he gets more money than all the other places around the world altogether. So he wrote this history of Poland. He wrote about a Warsaw Uprising in 1944. But what's also very interesting here is that we have an unbelievable market of additional Polish weeklies, so history magazine. There is no other country in Europe where you have that kind of market for additional magazines on history. Nearly all important Polish weekly do have their own historical ad, and it's all commercial. It's not founded by state in any sense. So it's selling, okay? Even some dailies, like Gazeta Wyborcza or Rzeczpospolita, they do have it. This is my own picture. I just went to the mega store and did the part of press stand. And this is the stand with history magazines in Poland. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, you won't get it anywhere else. Among them, there are two, if you are interested, there are two quite popular, but the best one would be Mówią Wieki and Focus Historia, probably. Okay, I hope I'm done. So thank you, shukran. And if there's any questions, then still you get like about 5-7 minutes before I kindly invite you all to go to the official opening of Polish stand. Yeah, please do.
Okay, sorry. You said that only a small percentage of books are downloaded from the internet. Do you have a figure on how ebooks are doing?
I didn't give it because the ebook market in Poland is still rising, but it's very small. It's in general, if we are talking ebook markets around the world, it varies between 10 and 20%. In Poland, it's usually around 10 or even less. In some levels, we are saying that it gets up to 15, but it's a very typical genre of books, I would say. So ebooks are starting to be more and more popular, but the way people are getting ebooks in Poland, especially if you are talking illegally, is still in PDF. It's not in it's not in dedicated files like EPUB or MOBI or others dedicated to certain ways of ebooks professionally done. So I would say it's rising, but it's still very low. Yeah, and they're crazy expensive. Yeah. No, but this is also the question that the Polish publishing houses, for example, they don't like to give true discount on ebooks. So the problem is that ebooks are usually few zlotys less than a regular book, which is crazy. I mean, because the production of ebook doesn't cost anything. The storage of ebook is virtual, so all on and on. But yeah, this is the talk. But this is also the question that publishers simply they don't want to lower the prices. I know it by myself because I am lowering the prices of my ebooks, and I'm selling ebooks. For example, I do, and I sell ebooks, quite a lot of ebooks. Mm-hmm.
If you could just say a few words about the role of Amazon in Poland.
I can say none. Amazon actually doesn't exist in Poland. What does is Amazon Deutschland, and actually it's well, they were hoping for having a great effect, but they failed completely. Because we do have actually internet providers, internet bookstore providers, and they won completely with Amazon. So Amazon is not the important factor in Poland if we are talking book selling. I mean, if somebody is trying to buy a book from abroad, well, yes, but it's usually for professionals who need the book in different language, which is not translated. But if we're talking just the regular book market, none. Okay, thank you guys. Let's go to Polish stand.